All right, so I don't really know what juice they've been giving Joe Biden over the last week or so, but it seems like we've gotten a pretty significant shift in tone from him in some of the recent appearances that he's been making. We had a press conference with a clip that I'm going to show you about student debt and a completely ridiculous question that he got from a reporter where he pushed back in a very accurate way. And then we're going to get into a rally that he did yesterday with some clips where he's getting pretty heated and definitely a lot more energy and fire coming from Joe Biden than we would typically see. So first I want to start off with this clip here where again a reporter is asking him a completely bullshit question about whether or not it's fair to the people who have already paid off their student loans that now people are starting to get just a little bit of relief. So let's go ahead and watch this clip.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who in fact do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses? If you want these guys give them all a tax breaks, is that fair? What do you think?
What about people who paid their loans, though, struggle to pay their loans, and now others don't have to?
Okay, so short little clip there, but he's 100% correct on this, right? I mean, the premise of the question is completely ridiculous, right? They're saying, how is it fair to people who have already paid off their student loans that now people who currently have student loans are getting some of this forgiveness? Completely ridiculous. Again, we talked about this in my video the other day where I was breaking down this entire student loan plan, which is actually a little bit better than what I expected from Joe Biden. Still, obviously, he's not canceling 100% of student debt. Still, we don't have free community college and trade schools as well. So there's a lot of underlying problems that still need to be addressed, but the question here is completely absurd, right? Basically, it's a pushback against improving society in any meaningful capacity. I mean, you could say the same thing about, if we came up with a cancer cure tomorrow and then people started turning around and saying, well, we can't start giving this cancer cure to people because that would be unfair to the people who have already died from cancer. I mean, so many different analogies you could come up with, but again, basically the question is fundamentally opposed to making improvements on society because that would be somehow unfair to people who had to suffer from the unjust systems that we have been putting in place for decades in this country. So it's a bullshit question, and his pushback there is also 100% based because, yeah, these are the same Republicans that are now coming out against student loan forgiveness who not only took, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least tens of thousands of dollars in the PPP loans that were 100% forgiven by the government, basically a handout to a lot of these people who didn't really need that money, and those same Republicans are now criticizing $10,000 to $20,000 in student debt for just average working class or middle class Americans right now. But on top of that, the point that he was making there is that all of these Republicans who are pushing back against his student loan plan were in favor of the 2017 Trump tax cuts that basically went, 83% or however much to the top 1% in this country. So you're giving a handout to wealthy people and billionaires and corporations in this country with the tax cuts, and nobody has any problem with the national debt or the deficit or inflationary pressures or anything like that when it comes to helping the wealthy. They only point out these things when it comes to helping average people in this country. So 100% based on that pushback there, but I got a couple more clips here. Again, he did a rally yesterday where he was basically just trying to bolster Democrats for the midterms and lay out sort of his policy vision. So here I want to start off with this clip here where, as Aaron Rupar is pointing out, he's getting a little bit worked up, talking about the fact that they were unable to pass part of this piece of legislation to officially cap the cost of insulin for Americans. So let's go ahead and jump into this clip.
We also included a provision that would have allowed anyone with diabetes, including those kids and their families, that should get charged somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a month. How would you feel like being a parent, looking at your kid and knowing you didn't have the insurance, and knowing if they did not get that insulin, they may die? There's thousands of people in America going through that. And these Republicans ripped that out of the bill, but we're coming back.
All right, so again, where have we seen this type of energy from Joe Biden throughout the course of his administration? I mean, he is getting absolutely heated up here. Now, again, there's fair pushback to this because, yeah, you failed to actually pass this policy, and you can come out here and blame Republicans for that, but the fact of the matter is, if you wanted to cap insulin costs, you could just eliminate the filibuster. You could get that done with the current makeup that you have right now in the House and the Senate, with Democrats having control of both of them. So you definitely could fight to get this passed, but you would have to not only confront the Republicans who are against this piece of legislation, you would also have to go and have the same exact type of energy for the corporate Democrats who are blocking this and many other popular policies that were on the table that got eviscerated by Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and a handful of other corrupted Democrats. So it's great to see this energy, but again, you have to be directing this not only at Republicans but also at corporate Democrats who are also blocking those policies. But now I want to get into this clip here where he's talking about abortion rights and how he doesn't think that MAGA Republicans have any idea what's coming in terms of the 2022 midterms. So let's go ahead and jump into this one.
The court, in its opinion, used the phrase that women have a right to vote and change this. Well, guess what? MAGA Republicans don't have a clue about the power of women. Let me tell you something. They are about to find out. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so again, appreciate the energy, man, but if you wanted to codify abortion rights, you could do that right now with the makeup that you currently have. You don't need a couple more senators. You don't need to try to work with Republicans in order to get that done. So again, appreciate the energy and appreciate, you coming out here and suggesting that if you do get a couple more senators that you will be able to codify abortion rights. But, at the end of the day, this still comes down to having this same type of energy for the corporate Democrats within your own coalition that are blocking these policies and that are blocking codifying Roe v. Wade at the legislative level. So, again, kind of making the right points here, but also it's kind of bullshit that he's trying to draw this distinction between establishment Republicans and MAGA Republicans. He did this throughout his entire speech, which is, again, kind of nonsense because if you're looking at especially an issue like abortion rights, but really across the board in terms of his entire major economic proposals and social proposals that he's been putting forward, the entire Republican Party has been against those, right? You can put together like bipartisan pieces of legislation like the bipartisan infrastructure framework, the bipartisan gun legislation as well, but we saw the result of that. It's just going to be completely watered down and hollow and not nearly enough in terms of actually meaningfully addressing the problem at hand. So, it's fine to come out here and pretend like bipartisanship with establishment Republicans is, something that's still tenable, but the reality of it is that it's just not. And fundamentally on policies, when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to economic policy, the Donald Trumps of the party within the Republican coalition are really not different than the Liz Cheneys of the party within that coalition. Again, somebody like Liz Cheney, who's like the current poster child for liberals right now, as the embodiment of what Republicans should strive to be. She voted with Donald Trump while he was in office over 90% of the time. So there really isn't this meaningful distinction between establishment Republicans and MAGA Republicans that he's trying to point out here. But, I guess on the abortion front, he's somewhat correct on that. But we continue now, and I want to finish off here from his rally with him basically laying out explicit and specific policies that if Democrats win a couple of seats in the Senate and they hold on to the House of Representatives, which really does not seem likely at all, that he is going to apparently be implementing these policies. So let's go ahead and listen to these very bold promises that he's laying out here.
My friends, we offer a starkly different version and vision of this country, a vision of a better America that's within our reach, that's within our hands, if we just vote. If we elect 2 more senators, we keep the House and Democrats, we're going to get a lot of unfinished business we're going to get done. Folks, look, we'll codify Roe v. Wade. We'll ban assault weapons. We'll protect Social Security and Medicare. We'll pass universal pre-K. We'll restore the child care tax credit. We'll protect voting rights. We'll pass election reform and make sure no one ever has the opportunity to steal an election again.
Okay, so, listen, again, a lot of those things were things that you were running on in 2020 and that you promised the American people already that you were going to get those passed and done and finished. And again, none of these pieces of legislation are actually being blockaded by Republicans. They're being blockaded by corporate Democrats who don't want to abolish the filibuster so that they can vote and pass these things with a simple majority. So kind of the underlying premise of what he's trying to say here, that you just have to get out and vote one more time. I promise this is the last time we're going to have to save democracy. there are things that you could do, not even just within the legislative agenda if you got rid of the filibuster, but also with your power at the executive level, right? You could deschedule marijuana tomorrow. You could go and legalize effectively marijuana at the national level if you wanted to tomorrow. You could help to free all nonviolent drug offenders from prisons across the United States who are rotting away in cells for absolutely no justifiable reason whatsoever as a part of the drug war that you not only helped to start, but are also helping to continue right now. So, I mean, there's just so many different things that he could be doing beyond what he's doing right now with his power. But, again, at the same time, we are seeing a little bit of different energy here from Joe Biden that I at least haven't seen in a minute. But we also had this kind of vibe shift or tone shift from the White House, whatever you want to call it, over the last couple of days as conservatives have been, again, coming out and giving these bullshit arguments against student debt forgiveness. And the White House official Twitter account has actually been directly calling them out, which is something that I've honestly never seen before. But apparently they hired somebody new to come in and help run their social media accounts. So who is ever in charge of doing that right now, I think that this is sort of more the direction that you should be going. They say here, pointing out that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene had $183,000 in PPP loans forgiven, as she's coming out here and basically saying that even conceptually, the idea that the government is going to step in and pay your debts is somehow anti-American. Meanwhile, she's doing the same thing behind the scenes. But they put together an entire thread here calling out every single Republican that was using these same bullshit talking points. Here we got Congressman Vern Buchanan had over $2.3 million in PPP loans forgiven, but he's against $10,000 to $20,000 in forgiveness for average Americans. Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen had over $1.4 million in PPP loans forgiven. Congressman Kevin Hern had over $1 million again in PPP loans forgiven. Congressman Mike Kelly, $987,000. Congressman Matt Gaetz, $482,000 in PPP loans forgiven. So just in like a fundamental level, it's kind of fucked up, or weird at least, that a lot of these members of Congress who got to vote on this legislation were simultaneously literally making hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, off of this PPP loans that were just then forgiven by the U.S. government. So not only is it like hypocritical, but it's also kind of corrupt in a sense that somebody like Matt Gaetz is able to make $500,000 basically in a free grant from the government for whatever the fuck he's doing with that money. So, I guess that's sort of just a tangential point, but in terms of the fundamental arguments that are at play here, student debt forgiveness versus the PPP loans, I mean, it's just rampant hypocrisy. We've seen this not just with politicians, but also with conservative propagandists like Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro. All of these motherfuckers also got hundreds of thousands, if not, like tens of thousands of dollars in PPP loan forgiveness from the government. But now they're coming out and saying, well, if you took out a loan, you should have to pay it, right? No matter what the circumstances are, you are responsible for the, burdens that you take on for yourself. But when it comes to like their individual businesses, when it comes to their propaganda networks, when it comes to their personal benefit, they have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever, not to mention the trillions of dollars that were given in slush funds to corporate America throughout the pandemic. A lot of these loans were supposed to be going to companies to retain their workforce. A lot of them used a lot of loopholes and basically fired their employees anyways. So I mean, there was tons of like fraud and terrible shit that was going on with these PPP loans, but they had no problem with that whatsoever. It's just when it comes to helping average Americans, then they start to have a problem with it. So I mean, again, listen, this is slightly different rhetoric here, slightly different tone from Joe Brandon, but if this is more the direction that he wants to go in, then fine. I mean, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's some different juice that they've been giving him. Maybe he's like, saw the Dark Brandon memes and just briefly forgot that he's a senile conservative, but I hope that he keeps leaning into these things and, don't back down from the fights, right? Obviously, I have my criticisms from the left and that, Joe Biden isn't going nearly far enough on a lot of these policies, but in terms of the Republican attacks, you shouldn't just give in to that, right? You should be going on the offensive. You should be pushing back against the corporate media outlets that are pushing these bullshit narratives that somehow, helping out average working class people in a direct material way is, unacceptable. Meanwhile, we're still dumping trillions of dollars into the black hole that is the Pentagon. We are still dumping, hundreds of billions of dollars into corporate America and the military industrial complex. But it just comes to, a fundamental reality of who conservatives actually are. They do not actually oppose any of these handouts from the government. They just want them to be directed at themselves, their personal businesses, their wealthy benefactors, and the people who bribe their campaigns. And whenever it comes to helping average people, they're vehemently against it. So, credit to Joe Biden, I guess, for coming out and leaning a little bit more into this offensive energy. But it seems like right now with the midterms coming up, he is trying to launch somewhat of a like counter offensive, which could end up working out for them. He has had, a couple of different legislative victories over the last couple of weeks and months. So, we're looking at a situation where it initially looked like Republicans were going to have this massive historic red wave. And now we're looking at a reality where Democrats could, maybe potentially hold on to the House. It's not really that likely, but in all likelihood, not only hold on to the Senate, but even win a couple seats to then be able to actually try to get rid of the filibuster or implement a lot of the policies that he was just promising